You'll hear Kim and I talk about topics including the following: why you need to be consistent and respond the same way every time to avoid confusing your little one, how to avoid overstimulation when it is approaching their bedtime so they know it's their calming time, why an early bedtime is beneficial and doesn't mean your little one will wake up earlier. I look forward to sharing these tips with you. So without further ado, let me introduce Kim Davis. I'm Helen Thompson and welcome to First Time Mums Chat. I'm a childcare educator and baby massage instructor. I know that being a parent for the first time is challenging and changes your life in every way imaginable. To help ease your transition into parenthood, I aim to offer supportive, holistic approaches and insights for mums of babies aged mainly from 4 weeks to 10 months old. My goal is to assist you to become the most confident parent you can and smooth out the bumps along the way. This podcast is brought to you by My Baby Massage. To find out how Baby Massage can help you to increase your confidence and feel more connected with your baby, check out My Baby Massage introduction video at mybabymassage.net/intro. Let's do this together. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Please contact a medical practitioner if you are concerned or have any medical issues. Hi Kim, and welcome to First Time Mums Chat. I'm delighted to have you here. I've spoken to sleeping consultants before, but what I love about what you do is you also specialise in the older children, which I think is nice because when babies are 1.5 to 2, that's also when they have sleep problems. So I will pass it over to you to tell me about what you do.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about the older kids this time, because most of the time we do focus on the younger ones, and especially those first few months when sleep is a real struggle. So I'm super excited to chat to you a little bit more about what we can do to help the older ones sleep a little bit better. So again, my name is Kim Davis, and I am the founder of Babes and Beyond Pediatric Sleep, and I'm based in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. So I'm quite far away from you. My passion is sleep, and I have been a pediatric sleep consultant for over 8 years now, and it is the most amazing opportunity I've ever had in my life to help so many families sleep better and to get their lives so much better with everyone sleeping in the house. So I personally struggled for over 2.5 years, not being able to get my son to sleep more than 20 minutes at a time for naps, and he never slept overnight. So it was 2.5 years of sleep deprivation in my house. So this led me to my path. Oh yeah. This led me to my path to become a certified sleep consultant with the Family Sleep Institute. And from there, I actually became a Wondrous Week Academy graduate and a Happiest Baby on the Block instructor, and also a CAPA certified childbirth educator. So I have a lot of things going on in the last little while, but for the past 5 years, I've been the director of mentorship for the Family Sleep Institute, and I'm also one of their assistant instructors. So my plate is full.
Yeah, it certainly is.
But I am so passionate about sleep. I talk about sleep all the time. So like I said, I'm super excited to join you today so we can talk a little bit more about the older kids and how we can help them.
Well, I'm pleased that you're passionate about sleep, and I hope now that you've learned how to get your family settled a bit more, you're getting a bit more sleep, because it's also about the adults as well as the kids.
Oh, for sure. That's right.
So what are some tips that you can give to a mum who's, say, got a kid who's 1.5, and they're not sleeping and they've been struggling for the last 1.5 years? What would you say to a mum who was struggling with that?
Right. 1 year is a long time to be struggling with sleep. So, what we really want to focus on, and a lot of the times what happens at this age is parents drop naps too quickly. And so,
Mm,
one of the biggest reasons why toddlers are not sleeping is because they're overtired. Actually, in general, when children are not sleeping, the number one reason is
yeah.
because they're overtired, whether they're not getting restorative naps or their bedtime is too late. Those are the main things that I would look at first to see if naps are happening at the right time, if they're restorative. So, three things that parents can look for to make sure that their child is getting really great restorative naps is if the naps are lasting at least 1 hour, they're not waking up in between, and they wake happy. If all three of those
Mm,
boxes are checked, you can say to yourself, okay, that was a really good nap. Let's move on for the rest of the day. If it's not, that's when it becomes challenging. And a lot of the times, what happens when little ones get up to about a year, year and a half, there may still be some sleep associations that are going on. And so that's why they're not able to connect into their next sleep cycle. So, for example, one sleep cycle for them during the day would be about 45 minutes around there.
mhm.
And if they wake up at that 45 minutes, usually they're going to be crying. And usually it's because that there's a sleep association going on, which could be either rocked to sleep, fed to sleep, bounced to sleep, just falling asleep with somebody else. They don't have the independent sleeping skill to transfer into the next sleep cycle independently. And so that's where a lot of the issues start to come up. And if they haven't learned it up to a year or a year and a half, that's a long time to be dealing
Yeah,
with a
yeah.
sleep association. They have no idea, right? They're comfy,
Yeah,
they're
well,
loving it,
exactly.
they're being rocked to sleep, whatever. But when they can't connect those simple sleep cycles during the day to get a restorative nap, or especially in the middle of the night, that's when it becomes a challenge for parents, because if they're
Mm,
waking up 5 or 6 times a night, every time that they wake for a sleep cycle, mom or dad has to go in, do the exact same thing they did to help their child fall asleep. And that
mm.
becomes exhausting, right?
Yeah, I
And
bet. Yeah.
I was there. I was doing that for 2.5 years. My little guy, he was a chunky monkey. He was huge. And here I am. I'm not very tall. I'm like 5'3". And here I am trying to bounce this over 20-pound little guy to sleep every
Yeah,
single
yeah.
nap and every single nighttime. And when he woke up during the night, I was so exhausted. I was so exhausted. And I said, no, we can't do this anymore. We have to try and get everybody sleeping better. And
Mhm.
so we really had to find something that worked for our family. And that's what I really want to stress with parents too, is that you really have to find out what works for your family. Yes, you can get all the advice from your friends,
Yeah,
your family,
that's
your
right.
coworkers, everybody, but it's not necessarily going to work for your family. And you really want to be
That's right.
mindful
Yeah.
that you choose an approach that you're going to be very comfortable with, right? There's so many different approaches that parents can take when it comes to sleep coaching and developing those independent sleeping skills. But you really want to be mindful that it's an approach that you can do during the day and also at 3 a.m. because our patient
Yeah.
level at
At
3
3
a.m.
a.m. It's not, yes.
and 12 noon is quite different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're thinking about trying going in and doing a little bit of time checks, like going in every few minutes, reassuring them that everything is okay, you want to be mindful that you're going to be able to do that at 3 a.m. as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah, of course.
that's what you really have to be careful of, because you want to stay consistent. And every approach will work, right? Whatever approach that you take will work. There's so many of them, but you have to stay consistent. Because if you're not, you're going to be sharing really confusing messages with your little one, and that's not going to work. We want to share a
Mm-hmm.
really consistent message that mom and dad are going to respond the same way, and we are going to respond the same way every single time that you wake, to help you develop those independent sleeping skills. And there's very, very gentle ways that and gradual ways that you can do that. And a lot of the times parents are like, oh, I just want it just over with. I want the quick fix. It's not a quick fix. If
Yeah.
you've been dealing with sleep associations for 2 years, it is not a quick fix, because just like you and I, it takes about what, 3 weeks, they say, 21 days to break a habit. And then to actually learn a new habit, right? You
Yes.
have to figure that these little guys, they don't know. They don't know any better, right? And so they're just like,
Of
mom,
course.
dad, you changed everything. Now what? There's going to be a lot of tears, a lot of
Mm-mm.
tears. And I find the older that the children are, the more tears that you have, because now you're dealing with a little personality.
Yes, which doesn't
They
help.
can
Yes.
jump, scream, do all those wonderful things that toddlers do. But it's a little bit harder to share that message that things are changing. And those tears are the reaction. They don't like that change. And understandably, right? If they're being rocked or fed to sleep, it's a beautiful thing. It truly is. It's comfy. It's great.
Yeah.
But we have to also take into account that mom and dad need sleep too, because they need the best of their parents. And they can't be their best if they're so sleep deprived. And I was one of those parents where I was not at my best. It was a very, very dark place for me. And I didn't think I was going to come out of it on the good side, to be honest. It was 2.5 years
Yes,
of
that's a long
not
time.
having sleep. It is. And so my passion comes from that. And I want to be able to help parents not go through what I went through. I don't want any other parent to deal with 2.5 years of sleep associations and being so sleep deprived. There's so many tools and things that I can share with parents that not necessarily you have to go through like 2 weeks of formal sleep consultation. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a tweak of a schedule, or help them get away from a sleep association, an earlier bedtime, even having a room conducive to sleep, having dark curtains in there, a sound machine, depending on the age of the child, if there's a lot of background noise that you want to get rid of. Those simple things can make a world of difference sometimes. And I've had many families that my suggestion of even an earlier bedtime has gotten rid of all of the night wakings and early wakings. And it was just moving that bedtime earlier. That's all it was, because they were so overtired going to bed. And like I said before, that is the number one reason why we see night wakings and early morning rising with toddlers, is because they're overtired going to bed. That's what it is.
And what about overstimulation? I know from the baby side that if you overstimulate your child, they won't sleep because they're overexcited. And would it be advisable not to let them watch TV maybe half an hour before bed? Because the visual of the TV can actually overstimulate them, and that probably doesn't help either, or give them a routine that's quiet half an hour
Absolutely.
before bed, like reading, or from my childcare experience, I'd say putting some nice quiet music on, or putting on particular music so that they know that that's my calming time. I don't know if that's what you'd suggest.
You said it perfectly. Having that nice, relaxing, quiet time, that routine, lasting no longer than about 30 minutes. We suggest 30 minutes because anything after that, it just becomes things that you're doing, and it's not really cueing their bodies and their minds that it's time to sleep. So have your routine really nice, concise, quiet, relaxing. And you brought up an amazing point in regards to the television. So one thing that we strongly recommend is actually turning the screens off, whether it be a tablet, anything like that, for those older kids, because they love them, right? They love looking at those tablets, playing games and stuff, even at a young age. But turning those off at least 1 hour before your bedtime routine, because research is showing that that blue light that we have from the tablets or the TV, it actually inhibits the production of melatonin, which is our sleepy hormone, right? And we want that to be happening. We want their minds to be cued that, oh wait, it's dark now. And that's the only way that it starts producing in our bodies, is from the darkness. So we really want things to be calm. We don't want these bright lights, the TV going, everything flickering, because it's going to take them a while. And some little ones, if they have TV before bed, it can get them excited and keep them that way for almost 2 hours. So even a short amount of screen time can just make bedtime battles like you wouldn't believe. And we certainly don't want that, right? And with toddlers, they can be challenging, those bedtime battles. I remember it well. So it's not a good thing. So you were absolutely correct in having that really wonderful, relaxing bedtime routine for them. So it just calms everybody down. The house just quiets down, and it's just a really nice, relaxing bedtime routine that can allow them to unwind and to settle into bed. So yeah, you're absolutely right in regards to that routine.
And what if kids are screaming and they're struggling and they won't lie on the bed? You're trying to just calm them down and say, look, I just want you to lie down. You don't have to go to sleep yet, but just lie down and I'll give you a little pat. They push your hand away. They're saying, I don't want to be patted because they're so tired. I've tried so many things like putting quiet music on. I've tried walking out of the room and just leaving the door ajar and watching them. And then they get out of bed and they come and say, I know you're there. Yes. I mean, how do you... So what would you say with a kid like that? You don't want to scream at them. You don't want to get them upset. You've got to keep your temper, but sometimes it's not that easy to...
No, it's not. It's definitely not that easy to keep the cool, calm, collectedness that you want, right? Because when there's hours, and honestly, some little kids can go for hours for bedtime battles, what you want to look for is the cause. So the cause of that hyperness or whatever it is overtired. They're overtired and you missed their window for bed. So that's what you want to treat first. So make a mental note like, okay, bedtime was like 8:30 or something like that. We really want to pull that bedtime back because they got their second wind and now it really is like skating uphill if you're with a toddler and they got their second wind, because there's nothing physically that we can do to get rid of that cortisol level that is just shot through their body. It really has to wear off. And so you have to ride it out, which is not pleasant. No, it's not pleasant, but that's one thing that you do want to make a mental note of for the next night is let's get bedtime a lot earlier. And one thing that I suggest for parents is if they're really struggling to find that appropriate bedtime is to watch their behavior around dinner time. So if they're getting hyper, they're not listening, they're not eating properly, they're just wired, running around, zoning out, all those behaviors, that's an indication that they got their second wind. And so now they're hyper and now we got to wait this out. So again, make that mental note. Okay, maybe dinner has to come 20 minutes earlier, because sometimes even shifting things 20 minutes can make a world of difference as well. So just making that mental note, okay, we really got to get dinner on the table a little bit earlier. We got to do that wind down routine. And, try and figure out that 8:30 was too late. Let's try, 8 o'clock or, 7:45, depending how old they are and if they're still napping, because that makes a world of difference too. If they're still napping, sometimes that bedtime can be pushed a little bit later. Most of the time, no. Usually for a toddler, you're going to see around 7:30-ish. That's usually a good time for them. Anything later than that, and you're probably risking that second wind coming along. So depending on your bedtime routine, adjust that accordingly. But those bedtime battles can be exhausting to say the least.
I remember when I was a kid, we used to have a bedtime routine where me being in the middle went to bed at say 6. My older sister was 6:30 and then my younger sister was probably 5:30. So there was half an hour's gap between when we all went to sleep. And when we got to a certain age, when we had a birthday, then my parents said, right, well, you can stay up an extra half an hour. So that's what we did, but it was always very early. It was around about the 6:30 mark. And I don't know whether this is modern life or whether it's me being kids go to bed later these days, that they're not encouraged to go to bed early. I am really passionate about First Time Mums Chat and providing a weekly resource that helps parents who are new to the whole world of parenting, and I want to hear from you. I warmly welcome questions and feedback and comments on my podcast episodes. I am always on the lookout to interview mums who are doing amazing things. Is your little one suffering from colic or constipation? I may have just the thing to help you experience less crying, less stress, and have a happier, more contented little one and household. Just go to mybabymassage.net/colic to get your free colic remedies cheat sheet. Start soothing your baby and get some much needed rest and build a deeper bond with your baby that grows stronger every day. That's mybabymassage.net/colic. So please reach out by sending me an email at support@mybabymassage.net.
And you make a great point, because we have shifted everything later in society now. And that's not what children need. They need that earlier bedtime. But parents are so afraid, and I will admit I was really afraid of this as well. But parents are so afraid of having an early bedtime because they think that if I put my child to bed early, they're going to wake up early, which in actual fact, it doesn't happen, because we're not taking anything away from that morning sleep. All we're doing with an early bedtime is adding on an extra sleep cycle at the beginning of the night, before midnight, to allow them more restorative sleep. That's where the most restorative sleep happens, is between, say, 6:30 and midnight. That's where we want to see their most restorative sleep happening. If you're cutting into that restorative sleep, you're going to fall into this vicious cycle of getting overtired, and you're going to find night wakings, and you're going to find early morning. It's not because they went to bed early, it's because they went to bed too late. So yes, I agree with you. Early bedtime, absolutely. We want to do that early bedtime for them, particularly if there is a sleep deprivation going on, right? That's the fastest way to get rid of any kind of sleep deprivation, is an early bedtime. We don't want you stuck at a very early bedtime, but sometimes it needs to be as early as 6 o'clock, even for a 3-year-old, because they're overtired and they're in this vicious cycle of, and they can't get out of it. And it's really hard to get out of it if you keep doing the same thing, keep having bedtime the same thing. Even if naps are not great, you need to adjust that bedtime earlier temporarily, right? We don't want you always be stuck in like a really early bedtime, but if you want to get out of that cycle, absolutely. Early bedtime for the win, always. And once they are sleeping better, absolutely, you can start pushing that bedtime a little bit later. But we always want to be mindful that bedtime is going to be flexible. We're not robots, right? So we don't sleep the exact same minutes every single day. For them, they don't nap the same amount of minutes every day. So bedtime is really based on the quality of naps, if they're still napping, and how they are around that dinner time, because we don't want to push them too long. But going back to what you said, absolutely, we want to have a general timing, like in between 6:30, depending on how their mood is, and to have a constant bedtime for them. But again, just taking into account what naps were like, if they're still napping, and how they are at dinner time, to kind of gauge where that great bedtime should be. And if they fall asleep nicely within 10-15 minutes, just babbling away, you know that you hit that beautiful little sleep window. If they fall asleep within seconds, minutes of hitting that pillow, they've crashed. And we don't want that because crashing means that they were overtired. And now you can count on having some night wakings and having early morning wakes. And night wakings with toddlers, and especially if they're not in a crib, can be exhausting as well, because they keep getting out of their bed if they're in a big boy bed or a big girl bed now. That is in itself a whole different ball game. It's trying to get a toddler back into bed after they gotten out in the middle of the night. So there's many different approaches that you can take. One approach that works really well if parents are consistent, we term it silent return. And when I say silent, it's absolute silent return, where we ask the parents to, if they come out into the room, we ask them to silently return them back. And this may take 50, 60 times when it first happens, but we really want to be mindful that there's no engagement with parents, because whether it be positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, whatever's going on there, they want that to happen. They want to engage with their parents in the middle of the night. And so they don't care if mommy or daddy is upset. They don't care if mommy and daddy is squeezing them, hugging them, doing whatever. All they know is that mom and dad is giving me attention, and I'm going to keep getting up to get that attention. Right. So that's what it becomes really challenging with toddlers. And a lot of the time parents will make that decision to move their little one out of a crib too soon. I've seen it happen so many times. When 18-month-old comes out of their crib, they don't have the cognitive ability to understand the concept and the responsibility of having a big person bed. And they don't understand. There's no boundaries for them, right? They can just get up and they don't know what's going to happen. They just get up because they can. We found that around 3 years old, that's usually when they can comprehend like some bedtime rules, the responsibility of having that big person bed, because they understand that bed is for sleeping and we need to stay in our bed all night until mommy and daddy says it's morning. It's time to get up. Until around 3, it's so challenging. And I've worked with many families over the years where they did make that transition too soon, and they just don't feel that they want to put them back in a crib. And it takes a long time. It takes a long time for them to really understand, like, you can't get out of bed in the middle of the night and start wandering around the house, right? So having a gate up and at the door, not as punishment, that's never the way that we introduce a gate. It's more so of a reminder for their little bodies that this is their place to sleep, and that this is the boundaries, right? It's never introduced that you have to stay in your room and there's a gate up because we don't want you to get out. Absolutely not. We just simply say, you know what, if you get up in the middle of the night and you still see the gate there, that's a reminder that you need to jump back into bed and wait till the morning your mommy and daddy comes to get you. That's all it is. Because sometimes when we put those boundaries up and we don't explain the reasons why, children get really upset. And we always want to give them the understanding that it's not a punishment by any means. We're not closing things off. It's just to keep you safe. That's all it is. Because we certainly don't want them wandering in the house 3 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes if there's stairs, it's a huge safety concern, right? And so we really want to be mindful that they still have those boundaries. And most kids love their crib. They do try and get out, absolutely. But it's not that they don't like it. It's just, hey, I'm going to see if I can actually climb over this thing.
Yes,
and
they're
learning to do that. Right?
Yeah,
they're developing. And they just want to see, I'm going to try. And so let's do this. It's not, has nothing to do with they don't like their crib anymore. It's just, I see this as something really fun and I'm going to keep doing it. So that's where sometimes that transition can come in a little bit too soon. And then parents, most of the time, they regret that decision by moving them way too soon.
What about letting them have things to play with in the room? Say they're sleeping, but they're getting up at 6 and it's just a little bit too early for you as a parent, giving them something that they can play with in the bedroom, like not TV, not iPhones, something quiet, or books. Is that a good option?
Yeah, absolutely. Depending on the age. If they were really young, I would probably limit the things that they can engage with at that time, just because they are not able to understand exactly what time of day it is. So if they wake up in the middle of the night, then they'd be like, oh, well, there's toys here. Let's start doing this. So if they're still in a crib, having a little stuffy or a lovey with them, absolutely. So they can hug that and go back to sleep. And we always want to be mindful too, that when they are getting older, and if they are in that big person bed, that we always want to share with them, it's not what they can't do, it's what they can do. So if they're waking up, you want to say, you know what, if you wake up and it's still dark in your room and mommy and daddy are still sleeping, this is what you can do. You can hug your stuffy and roll over. You can hum a little song to yourself. You can pull your blankets up, rustle your body a little bit, something that they can do, and not always saying, well, you can't get up out of bed, because they're like, oh, well, that's not very fun. But if you give them something that they can do and take ownership of their own sleep, that makes a huge difference when they get older, a huge difference, because we want to empower them. We want to allow them to take ownership of their sleep, because then they're going to be really proud of themselves. And another thing that you can do with them to help them take ownership of their sleep is to have bedtime routine charts right in their bedroom. Have those little charts that they can check off each night. I was actually just speaking with one of the families that I work with, and I was telling them a story about, as we were developing a bedtime routine chart for her family. And I said, one little guy, and he's the most adorable little guy, he was so proud of his bedtime routine chart. He took it everywhere.
Oh, isn't that cute? Oh, that is so cute.
Took it to grandma's house, showed her exactly what to do, because he was staying over for the weekend. He brought his little chart and he showed her how he was going to check it all off all night. And so he was so proud that he had his bedtime chart, and he was able to do this all on his own. So he knew exactly. He was 3.5.
All right.
So he was checking off his little bedtime routine for grandma, and she was so proud of him. And my heart was just exploding. I was so proud of him, right? Because he took ownership of his own sleep. He was telling grandma that he needed to do this in order to have a great bedtime routine. And it's so important, because bedtime routines are great for little ones, but they're also great for parents, because they keep us on track, right? Because bedtime can go for hours if we let it. Another book, a sip of water, whatever it is, they're very clever. And so they're going to ask you, they're going to test their boundaries every single time, every day. And that's their job and they do it perfectly. But having that bedtime routine or a bedtime chart right in the room can keep mom and dad on track. Check it off with either a dry erase marker or Velcro stickers. And it keeps everybody on track because they'll say, oh, well, I need to have a glass of water. Okay, buddy, what? We already checked that off. So we have that for tonight. That's tomorrow night. So you can keep going through it, right?
Yes.
So it's a really good reminder for parents and for the little one that we need to stay on track. Because I love those charts.
It's good for the little one, as you say, because you're communicating with them. A lot of the time, parents don't communicate with the children. They just say, right, it's time to go to bed. And I can understand if you're overtired yourself, but if you have that chart, as you say, I think that's a good one. You have that chart, you say, right, it's music time now. We're going to start quietening down. You can go and choose your CD or whatever you want to listen to. And then once that's finished, you say, right, now it's drink time, or it's potty time, or it's cleaning teeth time, or whatever it is.
That's right. And so it keeps everybody on track. And we have that on the charts that I share with families is we have the words, but we also have pictures of exactly what the activity is. So if it's reading a book or it's cuddle time or lights out, whatever it is, they check everything off and they're like, okay, we're done.
No, I love that idea. I love that idea. So, and how did that work with you? Did that work?
It works really well. Yeah, it works really well. And parents love it because, like I said, it keeps everybody on track and they have a plan, right? And that's what we want. We want everybody to have a plan. So if this happens, this is what we do. If this happens, this is what we do. And to give parents the plan and so they can fulfill all the things that they need to do, it really takes that anxiety. And I'll be honest, I used to dread naps and I used to dread bedtime because I would spend so long trying to get my little guy to nap for 20 minutes. And then I'd spend so long at bedtime trying to get him to sleep. And then he'd wake up 6-7 times a night. And it was just so exhausting. And I just dreaded any kind of sleep with him. But I have to point this out too, that not all siblings are like that. So my daughter, who is older, she's 2.5 years older, she was an amazing little sleeper. I could literally set my watch by her because I knew that she was just going to sleep this long. I knew when she was going to wake up for a feeding and everything was great. So before I became a sleeping consultant, I had no idea. I could not understand what parents were talking about when they said that they were sleep deprived. I was like, I had no empathy for them at all. I was like, I don't know what that is. But 2.5 years later, my son came along and then reality hit and I was full in sleep deprived pretty much right from day one for 2.5 years. So then I understood what parents were going through and it is tough. Those little things that normally wouldn't bother you a lot. And I was making so many excuses for myself and for my son. We traveled with my husband for his job. We were in a different country, different house. I was like, oh, it's the move. Oh, it's this or it's that. When I look back, that wasn't it. It wasn't that at all. It was because I didn't know what I was doing, for one, because I didn't understand how he could be so different from my daughter. And it was just, he was overtired and I didn't know how to get out of that cycle. I had no idea until I started researching myself and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. We just can't go on like this. That's when I really poured my heart and soul into finding something that worked for my family. And I thought, if I can do this for my family, I really want to help other families out there to get sleep back on track or to just get some sleep to begin with, because a lot of parents think it'll just pass. Oh, it's just a phase. It's usually not. Yeah, it's not. In very rare occasions, I would say it will correct itself, but 95% of the time, I would say that it's not going to, and it's just going to get worse, right? So they're not going to outgrow something if they're not taught how to transition independently. It takes practice, and some little ones need more coaching than others, and that's totally okay. Every child is different. So we want to be mindful that exactly in my family, that even though his sister was a great sleeper, he wasn't. He wasn't a great sleeper at all. But I'm very thankful for what I went through with my son, because now I know what families are going through and I can have that empathy, not sympathy. I can have the empathy because I know exactly what they feel like, exactly what they're talking about, because I've been there, I lived it. And it really is a challenging place to be for parents when you're just not sleeping. Nothing nothing works when
No,
we don't
nothing
sleep.
works.
It's so important. It's a biological need. And I think in this society too, I think we tend to think that we don't need as much sleep as we really do. And we take pride in saying, oh, well, I can function on 5 hours of sleep. Well, maybe
No.
temporarily you can, but that is definitely going to catch up with you. And, people think that we don't need as much sleep as we really do. And we need a lot of sleep. It helps build our immune system. It just helps with stress. It helps with everything. And if you don't get sleep, you're going to get sick, right? And so it's really important that we're really mindful of providing that opportunity for our children to learn how to be independent sleepers and to transition into those sleep cycles all by themselves.
Because when you're asleep, you're actually healing your body. If you're, that's your body's time to heal, time to relax and regenerate. So your business supports the whole family and not just the baby or the toddler,
that's right. It affects everybody. Yes, your child's not sleeping, but you're not sleeping as well. And we want everybody in the family to be sleeping. And the change in the family dynamics when everybody is sleeping is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I've had many families come to me on the verge of divorce because nobody's sleeping and everybody's fighting all the time, and they just don't know how to communicate anymore because they're so tired. And to have them afterwards say to me, Kim, we're not getting a divorce anymore. Like,
that must be so
quite
rewarding.
mind-blowing, right? And I just like, wow, I'm just not helping their little ones sleep, but I've also helped their marriage, and that's a big thing. I'm so blessed to be able to help so many families in the last 8.5 years that I've been doing this. It truly is a remarkable profession. Yeah, it truly is. And one thing, I maybe you've spoken to other sleep consultants in regards to this, but a lot of the times too, we're kind of new-ish on the scene. When my son was little, I think there was maybe one or two that I had ever heard of. Sleep consulting was not a thing. Now it's becoming a thing. But unfortunately, a lot of the times we get this negative connotation around us where all we want to do is to just let people, or families, I should say, cry it out. That's not what we're about at all, right? That's not what we do. What we do is support families, develop a plan together to help support them through the changes that they need to make in order for everyone to sleep. There are many, many different approaches out there. I could talk for hours about the different approaches, but every family is different. And you really want to focus on what is best for that family. Some families do choose to have a no parental involvement when they're teaching their child those independent sleeping skills. And that's fabulous if that works for your family. But if it doesn't, there's other ways that we can help everybody get that sleep that they need. So, and that's where the sleep consultants come in, because we know how to pick different things from different approaches and really put it together specifically for that family, because there's no family that's exactly the same. There's no child that is exactly the same. So it's not a cookie cutter, at least for myself anyways. It's never been a cookie cutter plan. There, in 8.5 years, I've never written the same sleep plan for a family, because they're so different, right? There's different nap timings, there's the different temperament with the child, the different age, the different way families react to crying. And that's what you really have to be mindful too, because if you're working with a family and the mom is suffering from postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety, there's a lot of triggers for her. And so crying is usually one of the biggest ones. And there's no way that they want to have a lot of crying. So again, we find an approach that's very comfortable for mom and for dad to help her, support her if he's not able to do a lot of those other things. And to find something that works for that family, because like we said many times during this conversation, we have to be mindful of everybody in the family to find that right approach for them and what works for their family, not just their neighbor or their cousin or something, right? It's very different. And moms, parents everywhere get unsolicited advice.
Yes, exactly. They do.
Time, right? And I got it with my family, right? As soon as you start talking about my child's not sleeping, you're going to get advice, whether you want it or not. And that's when it's hard, because I tried things that my friends, my family said did not work for me. It did not work for me at all. So I had to really sit down when my son was almost 2.5 and really figure out what worked for me. And for myself, it was a very gradual approach. And that's what I could handle at the time. And that's what my
Mhm.
son could handle at that time. So it did take a little bit longer, but I always tell families too, when I'm helping them out, that it's not a race. It is not a race to
Yeah,
how
yeah,
fast you
definitely
can get
not.
your child sleeping or sleeping through the night, because you want to build a great sleep foundation and you really don't want to rush through that, because you don't want a quick fix. Quick fixes don't last.
Mhm.
And we certainly don't want that. We want to be able to have years and years of great sleep happening. And so if it takes longer than 2 weeks, so be it. It takes longer
And
than 2 weeks. There's no rush.
and you don't want them to have a bad association with sleep, because sleep is meant to
Right.
be relaxing. Sleep is meant to be fun.
Great
It's meant
point.
to be a time to heal. And you don't want to get them really panicky about sleeping if you're really pushing them and getting them really panicky, saying, right, we've got to get this done in 2 weeks.
Right.
It's not giving them that relaxing point of view of sleep.
Right, exactly. And we want everybody to feel comfortable with the process, because there's a lot of emotions involved.
Oh,
A
yeah, of course
lot
there
of
are.
emotions involved. So we always have to be mindful of that. And I give this analogy. It's like peeling an onion. There's so many
Yes.
layers that you will have to go through with every family that you work with. And you want to be careful and you want to be addressing all of those layers, because you don't want to skip things and then come back and say, oh, well, that's not working now. It's because you missed a step. You missed one of those layers that
Mm-hmm.
you have to unravel. And sometimes when you start, peeling away those layers, you really find that underlying cause of the sleep issue. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when parents think, oh, this is the sleep issue, it's really not the sleep issue at all once we start peeling away all of those layers. So it's very interesting to see how everything comes about, especially with toddlers, right? There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
layers there. There's a lot of years, a lot of months, whether they were co-sleeping or a sleepy association being fed to sleep. If there's years of that going on, it's going to take longer than 2 weeks, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
That's
that is
totally
okay.
okay.
Yeah.
We don't want to rush it through. We want to see it through and to have them build that great sleep foundation. Most of the time you see amazing results within the first week with schedule changes and all those sorts of things. But if there's sleep associations there, it can take a little bit longer to get rid of them for good, but that's okay. When they're
Yeah.
gone, they're gone. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how long it takes, right? Yeah.
Thank you. You've given us a lot of good tips there. And I know that my audience would love to find out more about how they can get in touch with you.
Sure, absolutely. I'd love to share my information. So I have a website and it's www.babesandbeyond.com. I'm also on Facebook with the same name. And I also have an Instagram account, which is sleep_babes and beyond. And that's where they can find me. So if they want to follow along, I'm always sharing tips and things like that on the social media pages that I have and blog articles on my website. So I offer a free consultation as well. So if people just need to kind of figure out things, like I said earlier, sometimes it's just a little tweak in that schedule. You don't need a full 2-week consultation with me. It could just be my recommendation of you need an earlier bedtime and things get fixed up. And I would love to provide that for parents. There's no need to go through all of that if I can just simply say, change your bedtime. Right? I would love
Yeah,
to do
well,
that.
exactly.
I'd
Yeah,
love to do
yeah.
that. So they can sign up through my website and schedule a discovery call, and we can certainly help them out as best as we can. But thank you so much for allowing me to chat with your followers and your audience today. I really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise, Kim. I did too. I've actually learned a few tips from you from
Oh,
the childcare
good.
stuff as well.
Good
It's
stuff.
good to have tips of what people can do to help their kids to sleep. So
Right.
thank you so much. Wow, Kim shared some great tips, and I'm certain that you've taken something away which I'm confident will help you with any sleep issues you're facing. Just remember to be patient and accept that these things often take time. The investment in time and energy will help get you moving towards a better rested household. I highly recommend checking out Kim's Babes and Beyond website. And if you've got a query or want to know more about what Kim talked about, you can always arrange to have a chat with her via one of her discovery calls. You'll find links to these and other places where you can interact with Kim, including her website and Instagram page, in the show notes, which can be accessed at mybabymassage.net podcast/060. I would love for more mums to find out about my podcast, so please help me spread the word to other mums by rating and reviewing my podcast on Apple Podcasts. This helps me support more mums, yes, just like you, for a smooth journey into the exciting world of parenthood.